Degas is probably the greatest colorist of all time, certainly in Western art. So anytime you're doing color composition, you really want to take a review of Degas. And so here I am. I'm going to do a demonstration of how I think about copying Duga to look and think about his color, okay? So I don't want to make it complicated. I want to make it very simple and very straightforward. The one advantage you're going to get, and I'll probably explain this more and more through the video, which is short, is that if you go and trying to find a color scheme and you spend your time thinking about drawing, you're not going to understand the color scheme. You're going to start getting irritated because you know you're doing something you ought not be doing. The beauty of impressionist mark making, and I think you'll see it very clearly in this video, the beauty of impressionist mark making is that you can search. You can put down a color note and scatter it around, put it here and there, all right? Now remember, this is Degas using what Monet was doing on some level, but then he became this imaginative, and he was always an imaginative painter. He was always making the noises about people, plein air painters and the people like that, how wrong they were about everything art. And so here we are, allowing ourselves to take a look at a great colorist, and we're going to use only the eyes of color, okay? Remember, Ang said something about color and drawing not wanting to play together, and he's talking about his kind of drawing and color. Well, if you're thinking about color schemes, you better not be thinking about drawing, okay? Rough placement, that's adequate, but even that's not particularly necessary. Sizes matter. Locations roughly on the page are helpful when you're copying somebody. But in the meantime, though, I want you to just enjoy, and I'll try to walk you through every single thought I have. And so here comes the video. You can hear the drum roll, I guess. There we go. This is a sanded board. I mount these on gator board. It's sanded paper that I buy in rolls, and you mount it on gator board. It'll take about 5 layers without much work, and the reason I want to use that, and you don't have to have that for copy purposes. I'm having my students work on actually vellum tracing paper, which is very accommodating, because you only really need about 3 levels. You do have to have the ability, though, to pull up a light out of a dark, and preferably. Now, if you can't do it, you'll have to be more careful than I am being right now. What I'm looking for right now is the big general tonality of this picture. I've sat there and observed for a few minutes, and I said, what is the big, I should have said not general tonality, which is true, but the big color of this picture, right? And so I've concluded that it's a brown version toward warm. It's a warm picture, but the dominant color, if you lined it up with 10 other ones, like that little one to the right, if you can see that one, is a cold picture. This is a warm picture. So I'm just spreading these reds all over the joint just to get going, and you'll see that these reds are practically everywhere, or some version of them, at about that value. They're just scattered all over the place. Now, just because it's easy, I'm also going to now begin to place that really dark. It's easy and it's out of the way. You don't have to be considering anything dangerous. It isn't much of a drawing problem. It's just a location problem, but that's going to be the darkest dark. And it's a color value. So don't fail when you make copies to get the values right. And you'll see that I build toward these things. I don't automatically get it right at the beginning. I put things down, and I let myself look around a bit, okay? You see me struggling up there trying to get that dark. There's an edge to that nasty piece of paper the way I cut it, so it's not taking the charcoal. But you notice that I saw that there was a dark above and a dark below. And I would have, if I'd done a values study, I would have quickly observed that. I would have been part of the first statement of this thing. So if you blow your eyes, you'll see that there's a dark moving into a middle tone, and then a big dark in the foreground jumps out of it. That one in the foreground, by the way, Paxton rather would call a pusher back, meaning that everything happens behind it. It's there rather to get you to the center of interest, shall we say, but to the center of the picture, to the middle plane of the picture. So you see that I'm looking for the big colors. I've got the big value, the 2 big values, basically. There's a third one. But I'm looking at the colors. So I've noticed that it's a golden to red picture. The foreground is going to be the basis for the red. And now I'm setting in blues. I notice it's just scattering them around. This is a huge advantage of the broken color play. That note doesn't have to be right the first time, and it isn't. By the way, the image on the right didn't. It's way oranger in the family where I'm putting what you're going to see in a minute, where I'm hitting these notes. The image that's on the screen was much oranger, but for some reason, through the lens of the camera that we're shooting with, it winds up being more washed out or even toward the cool side. But not enough that'll bother you understanding what I'm trying to do here. So now I'm setting in the third area, which is that orange to gold thing. And these are what I'm really doing is setting up the dominant notes in this picture. All right, if you can see that stand on your head, you see there's a blue in the background, there's a rich orange in the middle, and there's this general red, neutral that's just everywhere. Darks are never black. Darks are a color, right? So make sure you, even though in pastel you have to blacken them down, make sure you get the right amount of color. Nothing about the drawing matters here. It's all relatively crude. I'm not really even interested because it'll cause me to focus on something else. As I said before, it's just crude. It's just rough locations. So now I'm bringing the black into play. I really do want the darkest dark to have its moment in the sun. Obviously, whenever you're laying a picture, you need to know what that is. But then I also notice there's a distribution of the darks. You can see what I'm digging in on the right side there, and it'll keep going. But there's the play. So we talk in composition about a dark. As soon as you see a dark, you need to see the set of the darks. Is there one, two, or three of them? How does that work? What's happening with the darks? And that's in the class of what we think of as spotting, placing of spots of dark, right? You can see the same thing happening with the whites. There's just spot scattered around. Remember, this is a color study. We're trying to study his color and his color relations, okay? Everything you do has got to be color relational. If you don't have this skill, it's time to get it, right? Seeing is seeing relationally. And nowhere is it more important than when you're trying to do color. Obviously, it's true of everything, but when you're trying to do color, it really starts counting. So I think in terms of value movements and of color movements. So if it's moving from orange to yellow, or if it's moving from blue to red or something like that, I want to notice that. But the gradations of value are similar, right? But the idea of movements simplify. If you start counting every little thing and looking in to separate every little note, you'll be missing the big boat, right? You'll be out there in your canoe. Then, by the way, what I just did, stuffing your finger into that, you can really gets rid of all the interstices, right? And it really brings your black, brings the whole area really, really far down. So I had to run back through there with some lighter blues. And probably still not enough, but enough to keep myself moving along here. All over the place at once in the start, all over the place at once in color, period, okay? Every note is a function of every other note in the picture. And when you get to composition, it's about the play of these things, how they interrelate to each other as you truck along. That's why I said about the darks. There's those 2 or 3 dark spots. It really does matter how they play to each other. Adjusting some of the blues, it looks like, darker in there. By the way, I had a really hard time looking at this. I was digging my head around the corner. I really couldn't get a full shot of the screen. That's the price of trying to do something like this. And the screen there, I'm using that because it's an assignment for my composition class people, as you all composition guys know. And so we're just simply using images that we can all share. But one of the great sadnesses of the computer is that these monitors are all different, and you probably should get them all white balanced or whatever to match each other. I think they're somewhat close sometimes, but sometimes they're wildly off. Someone's computer is way greener, yours is way redder, those sorts of things. Now, I'm picking up here that there are reds. There's a distribution of darker reds, and the red distribution is starting to draw my attention. And you see it through the blues above there, the reds scattered through those blues above there. But part of the play of color is the distribution, the interplay or the weaving of the same color or variations on that color that are just obviously unified with each other, just part of the same color group, but in a distribution, where some are smaller, some are bigger, some are more clear and articulate because of their silhouetting. But you can see how the color play, everything is this to this and that to that, right? The blues up top there, you saw that as we talked about the dark spotted around, I threw in some of those blues. I didn't particularly notice myself doing it. You probably did, but that's the dark blues in the foreground are doing exactly what the upper blues, you might say, are doing, except they're doing it rather in reverse. So the reds scattered through the blues up there. Here the blues scattered through the dark reds down below. So you see the blue play, though. It's all blue play. Okay. Degas, as I said, you gotta copy Degas, and you better copy him smart. Don't go in and do drawings when you should be doing color. This guy's a genius. He's a flat-out genius of color design. And I say that meaning, what took everybody so long? It's so obvious, when you see this guy playing. I noticed that there are these cool reds in there, and they all seem to be playing to those leg things a little bit, which are all a little bit playing to the body lights. Always, if you're going to hit a note, look around and see what's playing with. That's all there is to this kind of copying, okay? All you want to do is see the note to something and see what's up. And that's why I talk about play so much. This is what makes the music, right? It's the play, counterplay of note. Now, some of these notes are there to set off other notes, and you like the dress against that other red. That really dark, rich brown. It's a version of, you might say, the same thing, or at least they set each other off brilliantly. And or even the back side of the dress in the background there, playing to the darker red underneath. Or the red sitting in the blues above. This is all setting off stuff that Degas talks about. Remember, this is not a drawing problem. If you're looking at my drawing, you're going to miss everything that matters. And what you see, I threw a bunch of legs in there. I didn't care where I put them. I just wanted those notes flicked around in there, right? That kept me out of any thoughts about drawing and any pride associated with it. It's such a disaster, the pride associated with drawing. It's such a disaster for really doing well in color. It's just like it just eats everything, Pride's tough. So that's that picking up of other reds. You see, I was getting them down in the foreground. Now I'm seeing other play of it. So if you take in the whole, you'll start seeing this red play, counterplay, right? You start seeing those spots all relating to each other. Finally getting to that third dark, which in this case, again, is not a drawing problem. It's just crude placement. I just need to know there's one up there, right? It's not a spotting problem. That's in value studies. We're not doing a value study. Even though we want the values right, the values must be right. But it's not a values study, right? Don't confuse the two. When you do a value study, and I'll do one of these days, when you do a value study, you're doing something else. I don't know how to keep my computer staying on. I think there's a way to do that, but I didn't understand it, so it has to keep going off on us. Now, this is that distribution of the orange, okay? You see, that's that same thing I was talking about before. Once you see a note somewhere, look for where else it picks up. Look, always that, like that mentality of Paxton. Look for where else you might put that note. So that orange sitting there just sitting over the middle of that area, just featuring itself, really, really delighting itself in that place. And then you see the back of the dress. Part two, right? Just like the dark to the dark to the dark. Now we're talking about this orange spot to the orange spot to the orange spot, right? It looks like we could brighten up that middle orange spot. I'm sure you're all thinking that to yourself. I kind of wish I did, but because it's more clearly the third orange. I'm not sure I do by the end of this thing, though. Are you beginning to see what we're doing? That this has nothing to do with drawing. This is actually a way of playing with color. And you can see it can be done fast. You don't have to be lost in this thing. By the way, I'm hitting that note around the waist, not as a drawing note, actually. I'm actually asking what that one is related to. So I'm hitting the note and watching to see what it plays to. It's got a little bit of that neutral around it, but it's something else, just a little bit. And now I see that second shoulder red, orange, I'm going to say. Now you see what happens when you start getting those spotted around. You see how delightful that is, this play of the oranges. Now, guys, do you begin to recognize this is what we're talking about when we talk about music? This is an aesthetic activity here. It's got nothing to do with subject. And you could do this with any subject, right? He just happened to get a kick out of the stage because you could do anything, because lights can do anything, right? Everybody's always had Klieg lights, and they put screens, gold, orange, whatever colored screens, and change the lights, you know. So there it is, and that gives you I think, a pretty clear sense. Now, I'm going to say two things, and then I'll get out of here. But one of them is that now, from the point of view of a painting, this is very similar from the way you would start a painting in my world, right? You scatter around a bunch of colors and wait till the color scheme is pretty good, and then you begin bringing the organization of the drawing into play, right? So it's not very different from that, truly. Now, you'd be a little more thoughtful about where you place stuff, but you're not necessarily better off for having done that, as long as you have enough layers below. So now, this is 15 minutes worth of work, and if you can do that in paint, you know, you have 2.5 more hours, say, in a sitting before you're totally exhausted, and you can change anything you want as it pertains to the drawing. But the drawing, the way we think, the drawing is set up by the color, okay? However, we're studying, and this is my main point, we're here to study color composition, okay? So everything has to do, not with drawing. We just do bad drawing and don't care, kind of, okay? But it has to do with the interplay of blues, of oranges to each other, and the total unity of the whole package, how beautifully the colors go to each other and make a color scheme. So on that happy note, I just want to say thank you very much to my class for being very patient with me. And you guys will get way more out of this as you go to do your own copies. This is actually a demonstration for that composition class. And as I said, thank you for tolerating my use of it as a video. Well, see you all next time. Do please subscribe, share, and all those things. And make comments, ask questions. Thank you very much.